And I'll join palms. And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Begin the palms join. Put the palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all here. Thanks for showing up. Buddhist teachings around diligence are really important. And, if you're brand new to this practice, or maybe, you keep coming back for some crazy reason, really begin to explore diligence and how it plays out in your life. If you find yourself struggling, unhappy, stressed, angry, anxious, sad, depressed, whatever it might be, there's probably a lack of diligence somewhere in your life. If you find yourself really having a difficult time getting through whatever challenges or obstacles or trauma you're facing, there's probably some diligence that's lacking in your life. And it's one of the Paramitas, practices of the Bodhisattva: generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, and wisdom. And on one hand, diligence is really meant specifically in cultivating a spiritual path, whatever that spiritual path is for you. So begin to look at how diligent are you at a daily meditation practice? How diligent are you at if you're interested in Buddhism and you're showing up to Buddhist places, except for the couple of you that maybe got dragged here, there's the laughter. There's always one. Begin to see, okay, maybe I should read some of this stuff. Maybe I should look at what this dude actually said. Not this dude, like the Buddha. Maybe I should actually, do some meditation practice. If you're going through all the trouble to show up here, religiously, for lack of better words, diligently, for however long you've been doing it, then you might as well bring some of that into your life outside of here. A lot of times people come to places like this, and there are seats, don't worry, you're all right. Are you looking for someone? They're back there. Yeah. Nothing like embarrassing somebody for the first time. Did I do well with that? Thanks. If you're going through all the trouble to kind of come to places like this and learn about this stuff, then don't be afraid to say, okay, I'm going to bring this into my life 5 minutes a day outside of here. Because what happens often is people come to places like this and it kind of becomes a show for them. It's like, you might as well pass out popcorn. Right? It's like going to a movie and you're just listening and you're watching and you're observing and you're judging and you're critiquing. I don't even mean just me, everybody, every question, whatever shirt somebody's wearing, the mind just goes everywhere. And so begin to see, if you're coming here and going through this stuff, where in your life outside of here can you bring this in? 5 minutes of meditation, 5 minutes of reading, a couple minutes of just sitting quietly and being with all of that. and just letting that kind of absorb into your life. And see how that works. Another piece of diligence really just outside of that specific practice around meditation, reading, things like that, is just when it comes to anything in your life, whether it's work, whether it's family, whether it's relationships, whatever it might be, how hard are you working at it? Because the greater effort that we put into challenges in our lives, usually the greater result will come from it. Right? Relationships are not easy. Whether it's an intimate personal relationship, whether it's a friend relationship, family relationship, colleague relationship, classmate relationship, any relationship that we have with anyone or anything, they're not easy to maintain. And very often it can come back to recognizing maybe a lack of effort that we put into something. Anyone in here like to be lazy? Bunch of liars in here. It's like 10 hands up, right? I mean, I can watch 7 hours of Netflix straight just like everybody else. And I'm not even suggesting that that's bad or wrong. It's not about Netflix or anything like that being bad or wrong. But look how diligent we can be at watching the latest whatever on Netflix, 5 hours goes by and we haven't even gotten up to pee, right? It even has a pause button on it, but we just don't want to move. And then it comes to like, okay, well, how diligent am I going to be in my personal life, my spiritual life? And what do most people say? I don't have what? I don't have time. I'm just so damn busy. I mean, a new series of Shogun came out. It's really good, by the way, if you haven't seen it. I mean, I killed through that in you saw it? Yeah, I killed it in like 3 days. So it's really, just watch though where you're struggling in your life. And if you can kind of sprinkle in a little bit of diligence, a little bit of effort, if that makes a change. So, yeah, so with that, we'll start with the meditation practice. To those who are joining virtually, thanks for showing up. Glad you're here. Feel free as you are to say hello. There's a chat box on your screen somewhere. We'll start with the meditation. For those who aren't maybe here for the first time or brand new to meditation practice, a couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you, right? You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. I know everybody's closing the windows. Can we open those back up? So if we close those in the back, if we can pull them back up. Can we open these? Yeah. I don't know about you, but I like air when you have 80 people in a room. So, thank you. Thank you, thank you. Yep, just those two middle ones, just slide them up. Perfect. Thank you. All the way. Thanks. We like air. Yeah, nothing personal. So, all right, a couple things to tell you again. Nothing's going to happen to you. We're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind won't shut off, won't stop racing. You won't think nothing. Very often people think that meditation is about going blank or thinking nothing. You end up sitting there telling yourself, think nothing, think nothing, think nothing, right? You'll hear sounds throughout the practice. These are not distractions. These are not disruptions. It's just what's happening while we sit and breathe. Posture, you want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or lap, whatever's comfortable. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, do not expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed, whatever's comfortable. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing, but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Lost in thought? Return to breath. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move, and most important, with the practice of meditation, to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sound around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awaken. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means for all of us in this room, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. That's what we get. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other 20-minute period of your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It's direct perception into the present moment. And the present moment is very often filled with chaos, conflict, difficulty, challenges. So this practice is learning to be with life as it arises and not escaping from life as it arises. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do every moment of your life. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world around us, life gets simpler. But it's a practice. And as I spoke about at the beginning of this evening, diligence will definitely help. This isn't a 6-week course. It doesn't fix things immediately. It's time. It's patience. It's practice. That's why we call it a practice. And so I suggest applying patience to yourself as you continue this practice. And just keep working hard. So many of us have figured out how to be miserable for so many years of our lives. So a little bit of effort to figure out how to be happy is, it's the least you can do for yourself. Miserable, most of us, we got that down. We don't need to work too hard for that. So be patient and continue to practice. So with that, I'll pause. For me, always, I really just prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with, and we use the rest of our brief time this evening, and I'll respond to you all. And for those, again, who are joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. There's a chat box on your screen. Feel free to say hello. If you have any questions, you can put them there, and I'll do my best to respond. So open up to questions.
I'm reading a book on climate change. What is a simple thing from the Buddhist perspective that one individual can do about climate change, like setting up an intention or actually like planting a tree?
Yeah. One simple thing one could do would be read a book on climate change. So it sounds like you're already doing it, It sounds like it's important to you. It sounds like it means enough for you to immediately ask that question. Obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but the Buddha didn't speak to climate change, right? This is 2,500 years ago in India, so it wasn't quite the topic at the time. But I think with any issue that is important to us, the more we can educate ourselves on how to make a difference. I wouldn't, and even in the way you phrased it, are you relatively new to Buddhism?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, my suggestion either way is to not always look at, what would be the Buddhist way to do things? Very often people ask questions like, well, what would, I get it, this is a Buddhist temple, so you want to know the Buddhist way. But it could have come from Jesus. Could have come from Donald Duck. Could have come from anybody. So I think it's important to figure out how we can make a difference. And my guess is you probably already know enough ways. The challenge is, coming back to diligence, are you doing them? you could probably tell me 5 ways to make a difference, right? How many of those 5 have you done?
Educating is one that I'm doing.
Great. That's beautiful. That's where it starts. And I think when Thich Nhat Hanh is very famous for the expression engaged Buddhism. And so I think when we use Buddhist teachings and use Buddhist practice to see how we can, fight dealing with social, economic, environmental, political injustice, bring the teachings of wisdom and compassion into those areas, and we can create tremendous change. Yeah. What else?
I have one.
Go ahead.
Could you please define beginner's mind for me? Is it seen as like type A, seeing things from an open mind without preconceived notions, or B, seeing things from a fresh set of eyes with novelty, looking at something familiar from a novel stance? Because all too often I see people fall into inductive reasoning fallacies, and that kind of like closes them off potentiality.
Yeah, so my practice in this very moment is to respond to your question, to discuss beginner's mind as if I've never heard that question before, ever. Right? For those who don't know, just a little bit of background. Suzuki Roshi, Shunryu Suzuki, wrote what I always refer to it as like the Buddhist Bible, right? The Zen Buddhist book called Zen Mind, Beginner Mind. Suzuki Roshi built the San Francisco Zen Center in the 50s and 60s. Really, Buddhism in America, you can credit it to a lot of people, but without him, we're not sitting here today, literally. The text, Zen Mind, Beginner Mind, the focus obviously is beginner's mind. And this idea of how do we bring beginner's mind into practice? And this is a difficult one to do because the idea of seeing something or hearing something, or the senses, Zen Buddhism talks a lot about the senses: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, mind, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, or thought. That's specifically from the Heart Sutra. And the idea is that the practice is to experience things, all senses, as if you've never experienced them before, ever. And therefore, there is no preconceived ideas or notions. There is nothing you even have to abandon. There isn't even anything you have to fixate on doing or not doing to practice beginner's mind. Because if you're practicing, experiencing beginner's mind, you're not working at doing anything. You're actually just present with it. But here's the challenge, and this is why it's difficult. If we all operated that way all day long, we wouldn't survive the day, right? We've learned that when you turn the stove on, what should you do eventually? Turn it off. We've learned that when there's traffic, we probably shouldn't just run across the street as if we've never seen traffic before. So our senses keep us alive and safe, and in a very conventional, practical, functional way, drive our world. But they also create so much pain and suffering and craving and desire and attachment, because our senses tell us things we like. And when we like something, what do we spend our entire life doing? Craving it, chasing it, trying to get it. And when we don't like something, the aversion, we spend our whole life running away from it. So it's a balance, truly. It's, for me as a practitioner, specifically with Zen practice, beginner's mind, Heart Sutra, it's like a dance. It's a balance. It's the middle path of trying to see in each moment, where can I apply logic, memory, past experiences, right? Anyone ever done something really stupid? Okay? So, I mean, in the last 3 hours, most of us have probably done something really stupid, right? No offense to those of you who haven't, right? But, so, beginner's mind can also be, and I'm just kind of pointing out multiple sides to this, can also be really dangerous because beginner's mind tells us, well, if I've never done this before, or it almost creates a situation where we can ignore the stupid things that we're doing. But we want to learn from things we do that are harmful to self and others. We want to learn from things we're doing that cause pain to self and to others. So, in that sense, beginner's mind doesn't really come into play. But where it does come into play is anytime you've ever harmed someone, anytime you've ever harmed yourself, how long have you carried that burden and pain in your mind and in your heart? A long time. Beginner's mind says, I know what I've done was wrong. And I'm going to work diligently to not do it anymore. But I'm not going to continue to torture myself for 30 years over the painful, harmful things that I've done. So we try to find a balance. But ultimately, to me as a practitioner, beginner's mind isn't intellectual. It's eating pizza as if you've never eaten it before. You know? Which is always a good time. Unless you don't like pizza. But beginner's mind, you not know you didn't like pizza, so try it again. Yeah.
Is this diligence?
Yes. Look at you diligently showing up to know that was... Can you say that with more confidence?
Does diligence mean deliberate thinking, deliberate action?
Define or expand a little more what you mean when you say what like deliberate action means to you. When you say that, can you just ramble a little more? It'll just help me understand.
Like thinking about it and then deciding which way to go and be deliberate about it and act on it. Is that diligence?
Yes, but the practice, the teaching here with diligence is also, I hate to ruin it for you, to apply wisdom to every situation.
Wisdom and compassion.
Look at you! Yes.
I've learned and remembered.
See, so that's it. And the reason I say, for those who haven't heard this, then I'll come back to diligence in a minute. But the reason we have to apply wisdom is, let's, and this was, somebody shared this years ago, I love this example, but let's say you're in Poway and you want to go to Mexico and you get on the 15 freeway and you drive north for 30 hours.
Diligently.
That's diligently. That's some serious intention, deliberate efforts.
Yes.
Yet never going to get you where you want to go. So that's where we want to try to, yes, to your first question, this is diligence. Samantapada represents diligence in the 6 paramitas or the 6 tusks: generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, wisdom. But Samantapada, Bodhisattva, the enlightened being as a whole, represents diligence. And so to be deliberate, intentional, also coming from the intention, is our intention of diligence coming from greed, anger, ignorance, which is the 3 poisons, the causes of suffering? Or is our intention, are we deliberately trying to bring into practice generosity, compassion, and wisdom? So they all play together, and this is why it's really difficult to understand. Where's the wisdom in every situation? Where's the compassion in every situation? And very often, which is why I always say Buddhist practice is nothing more than holding up a mirror. Because not always, but usually, very often, many times, we know when what we're doing is filled with greed, anger, ignorance, all about me, or if what we're doing is filled from generosity, compassion, and wisdom, all about others. And so that's where we want to try to apply discernment. I like the word discernment when it comes to wisdom and, not so much judgment or being critical, but discerning, having some discernment on the choices we make. So, yeah. Oh, that's funny. Just because he used the word discernment, and usually people, I don't hear that word often. So unless you use that word after I said it, which I'm actually more curious to know than what I'm about to say. So feel free to let me know if you use discernment before or after. The question is, hi Jeff, lots of gratitude. Any thoughts on ways to cultivate discernment around when our effort energy is being misplaced? I found that when I place a lot of effort, I'm prone to clinging. Let me read that again. Any thoughts on ways to cultivate discernment around when our effort energy is being misplaced? Man, I wish you were here. So, when our effort energy is being misplaced, I'm not positive on exactly what you mean by that, but maybe you mean when the effort energy is in a direction that it shouldn't be going in, that maybe causes you to not get to Mexico when you're trying to get to Mexico. So I think sometimes, and then let me read that again, I found that when I place a lot of effort, I'm prone to clinging. Yeah, I mean, if we are like, what's that movie, Tin Cup? Anyone here seen Tin Cup? Right? Nope, not that many of you. The scene where he hits the golf ball, just all of you, please, here's your homework. And I don't usually give homework, so if I'm giving homework, it's important. Go onto YouTube and Google Tin Cup. It's Kevin Costner, and just Google golf ball scene. It'll pop up. I kind of have to ruin it for you to make this point here. So he is convinced that he can hit this shot. He loses everything, but he's convinced he can hit this shot. So he hits a shot like 18 times. He's incredibly diligent, right? He becomes, and this is what made me think of this, Chad, is he becomes... No, it was before. Thanks. He becomes incredibly, he clings to the idea, to the notion that he can make that shot. He clings to it, he attaches to it so much that he actually loses. But his pride and his ego are so huge, he just wants to prove that he can make that shot. And it would be like 10 hours in to driving north on the 15 freeway, which I know doesn't help you here because you're not from California, but it's the wrong way. And it would be like going the wrong way for 10 hours, but being so attached to that you're like, if I just go 5 more hours of the wrong way, I'm going to get there. So, again, I haven't answered your question, but I think sometimes you just have to step back, slow down, and open your eyes and just look and listen, right? I mean, open up a map. Right? You are clearly further away from Mexico than you were 10 hours ago. So sometimes dropping pride, dropping ego, well, always dropping pride and ego is beneficial. But sometimes in situations like that where we find ourselves so diligent with something and so stuck and attached to the way we're doing it, we have to just stop and kind of take a step back and observe the situation. And always be willing to recognize that we're just wrong. I know that's often very difficult for people to realize, but we're just wrong so many times throughout the day. Like literally wrong. On our views, on our thoughts, we're just wrong. And we don't like hearing that. But if we can embrace that, then maybe we'll realize what we're being so kind of deliberate about just isn't working. So have the courage to change it. Again, without in person, it's hard to know, but hopefully that helps, Chad. Yeah.
So Tom, today you mentioned about being more diligent and implementing meditation. So like not leaving or not picking up our Buddhism at the door when we walk in, but keeping it with us. So in addition to my mornings with Mozart and my bedtime to Brahms, is there, I don't want to say anything you recommend, because I think I know there's a little bit to say if you wouldn't recommend anything, but would you suggest that we can start to kind of...
Definitely. And I mean, what's better than doing a meditation with Mozart, Maybe like the real Mozart, but I definitely suggest 5 minutes. I mean, I spent 20 years just preaching 5 minutes a day. That's it. Especially if it's not a daily routine.
When I'm done Googling tin cup.
When you're done Googling tin cup,
there's
yeah.
something else I can Google that
Yes.
give me, a head start.
Yeah, and you mean with the meditation?
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't even suggest finding a 5-minute meditation. I would just suggest, before or after your Mozart, before or after your tin cup, every day, take out your phone, every doctor's appointment, every meeting, everything. Where is it? How do you know about it? How do you know about an appointment, a meeting, a doctor? It's on your phone.
Of course.
Reminders, alarms, everything. So I literally for 20 years have been telling people, take out your phone, put it on your, actually it used to be a BlackBerry back then, but take out your BlackBerry, put it up, 5-minute meditation, set it for 6 a.m., 10 p.m., whatever time. Repeat daily, end never. And that alarm will go off every single day. You might hit snooze or turn it off for like 3 months, 6 months, because you're just sick of it. And eventually you're like, you know what, I should just do this shit. And don't use a guided thing. Don't use a YouTube video. No, I mean, you can. I'm just suggesting that you not make those 5 minutes about having any tools or things. Just sit down, close your eyes, and breathe. 5 minutes every day. Morning or night, doesn't matter. It's just like brushing our teeth. You probably heard me say this, but we brush our teeth every single day. Right? We comb our hair. Some of us don't have to worry about that anymore. Every single day. These are things that are just habits. They're habitual things that we do. Brush your teeth, comb our hair. We don't change the way we brush our teeth. We don't change the way we comb our hair. We'll maybe the hair a little bit, but we don't do it for 3 minutes and then, all right, today I'm going to brush my teeth for 4 minutes. We just routine every day. So try to create a habit where that's routine every day. Yeah. What else? Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about intuition. Because it seems to me that intuition is basically all your past experiences rolled up into an emotion, which means that it would be like pratitya samapata. And yet I feel like it's a very integral part of most people. And just wanted to know if there's anything mentioned about it or if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, my very personal response around intuition in practice, meaning in trying to live a happy, healthy life, is it's really boiled down to your first description of it, which for those who didn't hear it, it is pratitya samupata, dependent origination. What we call intuition is only coming from what?
The past.
The past, for the most part, experiences, right? I mean, I don't know, maybe some of you get secret messages from gods or aliens or something, but for the most part, me, intuition is like, I've been here before, I know the outcome, etc. And for me, early on, intuition was the worst thing I should rely on. Because I just spent years making stupid choices, and all of a sudden be like, yeah, I'm going to trust my gut.
Yeah.
That became for me, literally it's a practice. That's why I'm just responding to it very personally. I had to, in essence, abandon all of that. For someone who grew up very cocky, very arrogant, very confident, very much trusting my own choices and thinking I knew what was best, yet somehow I spent 25 years miserable and depressed, and yet I still thought I knew what was best. Nope, I got this. I'm going to trust my intuition. My master said, shatter that because you're just flat out wrong. Don't trust your intuition. Just shut up and listen. That worked for me. And then you begin to cultivate, ideally, some wisdom with that. And then as you continue to cultivate and grow and learn, for me, then you start to default back to, okay, intuition. And I started to open it up a little bit, but I'm not a big fan of intuition. I don't like the way we use, from a Buddhist practice standpoint, I don't like the way we use intuition in kind of common, at least English language. I don't want to trust my gut for the most part. I want to, because that's coming from ego and self. I want to try to move away from that. and maybe do what's wisest and most compassionate, which is definitely not the core of who I am, right?
Yeah.
As I always say, I have to work really hard to be nice. To be an asshole is super easy for me. That's my default. So why would I trust that? Yeah.
I've been trying to start reading more about Buddhism as I'm practicing, and I was wondering if there's any, I might already know the answer to some past questions,
Sure.
but if there's any specifically books that you would suggest, like kind of as the introduction, rather than like kind of a lot of words that may not make sense.
Yeah, I think, so 2 books I always say for me are kind of my go-to beginner books, and they're very different. One of them I just referenced is Zen Mind, Beginner Mind, because that one will make absolute no sense whatsoever. And I think that's a beautiful place to start with. Like, it really won't even teach you anything about Buddhism. Zen Mind, Beginner Mind will, for the most part, teach you nothing about Buddhism. It'll just completely shatter your entire way of seeing the world. And in that practice, you are learning to, what I see is everything what Buddhism is about, which is shattering the way we have, kind of following up on what I was just talking about. It's kind of shattering everything we've always thought we knew. And pointing out to us that, like, wow, maybe I don't know anything. And I think that's a great place to start. The second book for me always is called Lotus in the Stream. It's out of print. You can get it on Amazon, typically used copies. There's always one brand new one out there for like $300. Don't buy that one. It's out of print because the original translator, Tom Graham, they retranslated it. And so they stopped printing the first one. The second translation is called, I'll get the name of it, I forget. The second one is also good, but it was translated by a Taiwanese Buddhist nun I know her personally, she's wonderful, but also not the same lens coming from like a 45-year-old middle America dude who also had his views, but I think had a better grasp on Western culture. But the book itself, whichever version you get, Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path, Dependent Origination, Karma, Rebirth, how to practice Buddhism, all of those key basic topics of Buddhist teachings are in like 12 to 15 pages per chapter. And I'm convinced truly you could read those 2 books and never read any Buddhist book again in your entire life and just spend the rest of this life actually trying to do what's in those. Now, nobody ever listens to me and we keep reading, right? But those are the core. That's actually, they changed the name to Core Teachings of Buddhism, I think, or Core Teachings of the Buddha. Written by Master Xing, the second name, the translation. But yeah, Core Teachings of Buddhism, I think, is the book. And it's got like a candle on the front. It's really beautiful. So Lotus in the Stream or Core Teachings. Yeah. So very helpful. I guess the practice, catching it an hour in. And yeah. So the response to the question about, putting effort into the right place, Chad said catching it an hour in instead of 10 to 30 hours in. Yeah, definitely. Less gas that way. What else? Questions? Yeah, Jim.
The opposite of living from intention, would it be, from intuition, would it be living with intention?
So the question is the opposite of living from intuition, living with intention. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah. I think in the way that I'm talking about it, not necessarily, I think the way I gave the example, possibly, but not necessarily, because I think even if I use, again, my personal example that I was talking about where I wasn't going to trust my intuition, so I could easily say, well, I'm going to trust my intention. But that intention is still possibly coming from misguided places, coming from greed or anger, ignorance, pride, ego, sense of self. So I think So I wouldn't say that the opposite of intuition is living with intention. I think living with intention, the way we often refer to it as like this beautiful, like I'm living with a beautiful intention, I think that's wonderful. But I still don't think that's the opposite of living coming from a place of intuition. I think the opposite, if I had to say, place of coming from intuition is just shutting up and being present and observing. Kind of that example I gave of, step back, take a look, observe. If you've been driving for 10 hours and you're not in Mexico yet, maybe look at a map, maybe. So I think the opposite is just kind of stepping back and not even assigning any sort of beautiful intention or wrong intention. Observance, I guess. Does that help? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess you'd say you could step back and see what is my intention here.
Oh, well, if you'd asked the question that way, then yeah. Yeah, but even that won't get you there. Again, using the Mexico example, if you step back and you say, okay, what is my intention here? And you've gone 10 hours north and you're still not in Mexico, and you step back and you say, what is my intention here? My intention is to go to Mexico. You're going to start driving again. So I think I think there's something more than that. I don't know what it is, but yeah. Wisdom. You should be sitting here. What else? We'll do one more question before we close.
At the beginning, make the three statements. Can you just quickly say which of what they are?
Yeah. So at the beginning, what you all have sworn to and vowed to do the rest of your life, you didn't notice it. We trick you from the beginning, you're all hooked. And we shave your head and put robes on you on the way out. We do what's called taking refuge. And for me, it's my personal practice, and so I invite people to join in. For a lot of people, they don't even know what it means. Thus the question. And eventually somebody asks, like, hey, I've been saying that for 2 months. What does it mean, right? So we take refuge is the first thing. Look at the word refuge, and I'll close with these thoughts. Refuge, safety, comfort, protection. The word refuge means different things to different people. But the first one is, and it's called the triple gem, or the 3 jewels of Buddhism, the Buddha. Now, often one might think that means we're taking refuge in the Buddha himself, as if he's going to save you or fix you or heal you. He died 2,500 years ago, and he cannot help you one bit, my friend. You are on your own. So we're not taking refuge in him. We're taking refuge in what's called bodhicitta, or Buddha nature. In the idea that the Buddha was human. He ate, he slept, he went to the bathroom, all that stuff just like we do. He was human. He figured out how to end suffering. So we take refuge in that bodhicitta, the Buddha nature, that as the Buddha taught, he's no different than we are. We are no different than him. If the Buddha could awaken and figure out how to end suffering, or at least decrease suffering, then so can we. So I find a lot of comfort in knowing that I can suffer less. I don't need anybody else to figure that out for me. I can do it. The second one is the Dharma. We take refuge in the teachings. In the practice, that if we practice diligence and compassion and wisdom and generosity and morality and patience, if we stop lying and cheating and stealing, right? If we stop letting intoxicants ruin our lives and sexual misconduct, if we cut all these things out of our lives, right? Maybe we'll suffer less. So we find comfort in knowing that if I just become a better human being, that's going to make me and those around me happier. So I find that very comforting. And the third one is the Sangha. The Sangha is the community. At the time of the Buddha, it was the monks, and then they added the nuns. And so it was the Sangha that lived together and practiced. Fast forward 2,500 years later, and the Sangha is a group of people coming together to meditate, talk about Buddhism, explore the nature of our own mind, things like that. So Sangha is community. People to challenge you, to question you, to hold you accountable, things like that. But I also look at Sanghas as not just in a Buddhist spiritual sense, but traffic. You ever been in 5 o'clock traffic? That's your Sangha. If you treat that Sangha the same way you treat this Sangha, your experience in traffic will be so much more pleasant. I want you to watch here as we all leave and you all rush to get your shoes out of the shoe rack. I want you to pay attention to how slow and calm and peaceful everybody goes to do that, going to get your shoes. If we just drove in traffic that way, it could be just as pleasant. But we don't. So we'll join palms as we close. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. All right, before you all head out, our Dharma Bum host Anna will come up and do a couple announcements. Thanks, Anna.
Hello, everyone. I'm tonight's host, Anna. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone with addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it, then bring it back whenever you are done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. If a few people could stay to close and latch the windows, that would be helpful. Thank you for being here. We wish you well and hope to see you all